Thank you for joining us at the fire. This is Jill.
And my name is Ben.
Today we're going to be discussing weird hotel experiences.
That's correct. I personally don't have any hotel stories or hostel stories.
So Ben, let me ask you, what's one of the weirdest things about staying in a hotel?
I think it's that you're instantly staying somewhere you've never been before.
Or
you don't know much about.
Or you don't know who else has stayed there.
That's true too.
Because think about it. That bed that you sleep in, how many other strangers have slept in that bed?
Well, think about it like this. Somebody the previous night had just slept in that bed.
If it's a good hotel.
Yeah.
And it's not like...
And I mean, nowadays, chances are, I mean, with Airbnb and all the other disruptions to the industry, if there's a hotel around, chances are it's a busy hotel.
Right. I don't remember the last time I stayed somewhere and I was the only guest.
Yeah, I can't remember the last time I stayed at a place and I was like, wow, there's not many people here. That hasn't happened in a while.
And while you do have the ability to see the people there, do you think there may be guests at hotels that we can't see?
Oh, I see what you're driving towards. Ooh, spooky.
So immediately your mind is going to jump to the paranormal, ghosts, people who have died in the hotel. I mean, we think about classic horror hotel stories like the Cecil in California, where guests were complaining about nasty tasting tap water. The authorities discover a body in the water tower.
Is that the one where there's security camera footage
of the girl acting?
Closed circuit television of this woman visibly terrified
or erratic behavior. She was just going nuts. She was cornered in an elevator, it appeared, and while nobody else showed up on the tape,
she seemed to like she was looking in the hallway.
She was talking to somebody. Her mouth was moving. She was
talking to herself too at a lot of points in the film, apparently.
Yeah. Because we don't know what was going on. But a lot of scary things happen in hotels.
Well, there was also the hotel that H.H. Holmes built.
During the
Murder
World Fair.
Hotel. Was it in New York?
It was in Chicago.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he would lure tourists that were attending was it the World Fair?
I think it was one of the World Fair. Yeah. I mean, he was doing it a little before that too, but he really caught his stride during the, yeah.
And he built almost like a maze with little traps around this giant home that he would rent rooms out as an inn, so it eventually did turn into a hotel, but nobody would ever check out.
Yeah, it's extremely terrifying. I mean, like we said, I mean, a hotel you've never been to before. It could feel like you're in a maze when you're walking around. Like, where's my room? You take the wrong turn,
and who knows if you're going to walk back down that hallway alive.
Yeah. Or sober again.
Or you're going to turn the corner and see these two terrifying twins just standing in the hallway.
Yeah. Only if you're lucky.
Isn't that your favorite movie or your favorite book?
I guess it's my favorite horror film.
That's a good one. The Shining is what we're referencing.
Jack Nicholson, terrible job. Why would I say that? No, terrific job. He did a terrific job.
He did a terrific job at making himself seem terrible.
Yes. Terrifying, but terrific job. So, you worked at a hotel. Do you have any interesting experiences? Was the hotel particularly creepy, or what happened?
No, I worked at a beautiful modern hotel. It was gorgeous in a bustling area.
So one of the newer ones.
Oh, okay. It was brand new. I don't even know how long it had been there, but it was just in pristine condition.
But I guess that doesn't mean nothing weird can't happen there.
Yeah, something kind of creepy did happen there. So I worked kind of a funny role. I was in sales, and I sometimes picked up some desk shifts.
That is a funny role.
I know, one or the other, please.
It's like a dinner roll made out of cheese. That's a funny role.
Don't be dissing on Red Lobster. Anywho, so I had this woman one day come in and request a tour because she was relocating to the area. I should say that this particular hotel specialized in accommodating long-term stay guests. And this woman told me she was relocating, and it wasn't uncommon for people to come in and ask for tours. So I gave her a quick little walk around the different rooms that we offered, and she was very quiet. So just to kind of drum up conversation, because everybody knows how much I love to talk, I asked her what's bringing her to the area, and she said work and left it at that, and I took that as a cue not to pry anymore. So we get back to the desk, and I ask her if she needs any additional information. Gave her my card, gave her some other information about the town she was relocating to, and she seemed pleasant enough and said thank you, and then asked me for a housekeeping application, which I mean, who am I to say her husband's not relocating for work and she's checking it out on their behalf, or I shouldn't say husband, her partner. So I handed one to her, and that was that. I should say that took place, I want to say like a Wednesday or Thursday, and my next shift I was working was a Sunday. And I always worked breakfast on Sundays, and so breakfast cues people checking out. It was very, very early in the morning. Like I had just got in, I just got out my coat, I walked back out to the desk, and somebody was already waiting for me to check them out. And this particular guest looked very tired and frustrated. I asked if everything was okay, how their stay was, and she looked up at me, and I realized this is the same woman that I had given a tour to at the hotel a few days earlier and had given a job application to. She was checking out by herself, and she was not having it. I asked, would you like us to charge the card on file, or do you want to pay some other form of payment? And she goes, how much is the room? And so I gave her the price. She goes, when you checked me in last night, you gave me a different price. And she started haggling with me, and I'm like, I'm so sorry, you must be mistaken, I wasn't here last night. She started calling me a liar. She threw the money on the counter, and I said, ma'am, I will happily go grab my manager, and she can discuss a discount rate for you if something wasn't satisfactory. Like, let's work this out. And she proceeds to pull out this piece of paper. And this piece of paper had handwriting all over it. It was so old, it was torn, it was wrinkled. I can tell it had been sitting in her purse or her pocket or wherever she pulled it out from for a very long time. And there were several images of these women. They looked like the pictures were like Polaroids or something. I don't know if they had Polaroids in the 80s. But they seemed to be in pretty dated attire. And what this woman had done is she taped these Polaroids with this handwriting on this piece of paper and made photocopies of them. And she carried the photocopies around. And she put this on the counter, and she said, it was so loud last night. You didn't protect me. I wasn't safe here. These 3 women have been following me around for the last 20 years. They electrocute me at night. You didn't protect me. They've been taunting me. They were outside my window. And I looked at the room she stayed in, and it was on the 2nd floor. There was unless somebody was up on a ladder, and we're right by the highway. So there's no way anybody was right outside her window. And I know for a fact that we had a fantastic person working night audit, and they would do security sweeps all night long. So my manager must have noticed on the camera and stepped out to come to my rescue. And she simply just took the money from the woman and said, okay, you need to leave now. And the woman would not go. It got to the point where we felt like we almost had to call the police, and finally she left. So I had a friend who worked in housekeeping, and she came down to the desk and she told me that yesterday when the woman had checked in, she checked in rather early, she got on the elevator and started inspecting the elevator. She would ride it up a floor, then ride it back down, then ride it back up a floor, and then ride it back down. And when the housekeeper asked if there was something she needed help with, she said no, she's just riding the elevator. Same housekeeper came back early the next morning for a shift, and she was assigned to the room that the woman was staying in. She came down and got me, and the room was just torn apart. She had detached, I think there was a smoke detector. She had detached, I think, the Wi-Fi box that was in the hallway. She had hung up curtains and sheets over windows and taken down the shower curtains and turned the TV down so the screen was facing the floor. It was pretty wild. It was very obvious that she was very afraid that somebody was either watching her or was going to get into the room. Yeah. Kind of a sad story if you think about it, because I mean, definitely mental illness is nothing to joke about, and it's
we would never make light of that
seriously. But at the same time, sometimes I mean, I don't know this woman. To give her the benefit of the doubt, like, who's to say somebody's not stalking her?
Know things, and maybe these women are following her.
Maybe they do have people who are taunting her to try to keep her mouth shut or make her look like she's insane.
There could be some insanity as a result of all this torture over the years. I mean, she was on the second floor. There's no way anybody was outside the window.
Right. I mean, but who's not to say somebody can't get a ladder?
One thing that strikes me is the job application thing.
Right.
But then when you said she was inspecting the elevator, I think because she's looking for a place to stay, she's looking for a place to hide out. And I think she's trying to figure out the integrity of your establishment. I think this lady is brilliant. Like, she's asking for an application for the housekeepers because she wants to see the kind of people that are going to be in and out of her room.
Oh, my goodness.
And going through her stuff. She's that, like... deep,
I didn't even think about that.
She's that deep into this. She's looking at the elevator because she wants to make sure no one can watch her. Like, if they are, she knows where they're watching her and what they're seeing. Like, the elevator can move, how fast it goes, how long she has in the elevator. She was probably, like, counting in her head. I don't know. Like, the psychosis is so deep, you know? Like, you're just trying to protect yourself.
Right.
At that point.
And to your point, who's to say that people didn't drive her to this point of, I mean, I don't want to call it insanity, but until you can really call it anything else, maybe paranoia. That's a real phenomenon that happens in our country called gang stalking. I don't know if we have any Last Podcast on the Left fans out there. Awesome podcast. Those guys are incredible.
Marcus Parks, Ben Kissel, Henry Zabrowski, brilliant gentlemen.
Yes, give it a listen, but make sure you have a good sense of humor because we don't want to hear your bitching if it offends you.
Yeah, you really have to.
You have been warned.
Yeah, they are hilarious. I'll say that.
They have a wonderful and very interesting episode on gang stalking, and that's actually where I learned about this. They went into such great detail, and it really aligned with what I experienced with that woman that day at the hotel. So I'm not discrediting her as being crazy because I don't know this woman. You brought up some valid points, but it was just a weird experience.
And they do bring up the idea of mental illness in their discussion. So that is interesting to think about also. Like, they've been following her for 20 years. That seems a little crazy.
Right.
No offense.
Well, no. None. I was about to say none taken.
Yeah, be careful.
So that's my terrifying hotel tale. But I think our guest storytellers tonight may have something a little more horrific for all of you paranormal fans out there.
So tonight we have a listener story, kind of a listener. She's a member of my family. It's my younger sister, Christine. Her husband was employed, and did he live there?
Yeah, so he grew up in Rush City, Minnesota, where the Grant house is that I'm going to be talking about. So he grew up there and he went to high school there. And a
Okay.
friend of his was the owner of the Grant house for a couple of years.
All right, and I did some research. Is it Todd Johnston?
Yep.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I saw his name a lot of different places.
Ben's a total creeper.
That's okay. I did my own Facebook stalking because I know I've met this man and I know I've heard his name 100 times, but whenever you go to somebody's hometown and you've never been there before, you're introduced to everybody and all these names and faces are piling through your head, but you can't ever connect the two.
Yeah.
So I had to do my own Facebook stalking to know who I was exactly talking about.
Nice. Okay, so I guess I'll let you ramble for a little bit. What happened there? What's the story?
So the stories that I've heard from my husband that Todd Johnson had told him go back from when he was owning the Grant house. He no longer owns it. I think he sold it just a couple years ago. But they just had a lot of strange events happening. A couple of the stories that I know of, there was one time that they were in the dining room and they had a bunch of balled up aprons that had just come back from being washed. And they were sorting through them, folding them, getting them all unknotted because all the strings get tied together. And they hear this loud crash in the kitchen. So they go into the kitchen to check out what's going on and they don't see anything. They can't find anything that would have fallen to the ground or made this loud noise. And they go back into the dining room and it had to have only been a couple of minutes, maybe 5 minutes. And they come back to find all of their aprons nicely folded in piles on the table.
What? How many aprons? Do you have any idea?
I don't know. I assume, like a good load of laundry full.
Like a dozen.
An industrial-sized washing machine full.
Right, yeah. And so then another story that I've heard is one of their workers, I don't know her name, she was in the kitchen doing some dishes, cleaning up, and something had fallen off of, I think it was off of like a shelf that was just above her, and it almost hit her and it landed at her feet. It was like a wooden spoon, I believe, or a spatula. And her knowing the history of like the ghosts and the weird events that have happened there, or I should say supposed ghosts, she just kind of laughed and said, "Hey, at least you're not throwing knives." And right after she said that, so she said it out loud, like she was talking to them, acknowledging that they're there. And so she says this out loud, and shortly after, a knife fell off the shelf that the spatula had just fallen from and cut her wrist a little bit and then fell to the floor.
Oh my God.
Whoa. And there's nothing, I mean, how does something just come off of a shelf? You know what I mean? How does that just happen?
Yeah, and that's the only thing.
Yeah, and she's there by herself. So, I don't know. It's just kind of cool, kind of creepy. And then another story that I have heard is they had some guests staying. And, the next morning they come down to check out and they do the typical, "How was your stay?" Small talk, "How did you sleep?" And they're like, the hotel is really nice, but I don't think we'll ever stay here again. And they were like, oh, they were pretty taken back. Didn't quite understand. They said, "Well, what was the problem?" And they said, "Well, there were these kids running up and down the hall all night, laughing, pounding with their feet as they're running down the hall, and at all hours of the night, and it kept us up all night long." And they were going on and on. Where were these kids' parents? I don't understand why they were up so late. They sounded young by their laughs. And the worker that they were talking to says, I am not sure what you are talking about. You two are the only guests we had in our hotel last night.
What?
Yeah, having spent all day reading about the Grant House and people's experiences and things, like the hair standing up on my arms because this echoes a lot of what I read online. And it's
Really?
yeah, it's really scary. There was one website that pretty much listed all the activity, strange voices, hearing laughter, footsteps, furniture getting moved around, different objects like what the employee saw, what happened with the aprons. And then I'll have to send you this picture. Allegedly, the Rush City Paranormal Society caught a photo of the spirit of a young boy. And they brought mediums with them, and one claimed to have communicated with the boy before. He's 4 years old, and his name is Obadiah. And
I think I saw something about that, because after Tony told me all these stories, I started looking into it too.
Okay, yeah. And the photo credit was to Hannah Johnston. I wonder if she could be related to this Todd character.
I think that's his daughter.
Okay.
Don't officially quote me on it, but I think that's his daughter.
We will probably end up removing references to names since unless we contact.
Well, I found it in an article.
Okay.
It's information that's out there. I just thought it was interesting. Like all I found was the photo. It wasn't in an article. I saw it on Pinterest. Of all places.
That's where I saw it too.
Yeah, I don't know why it's there. Like, there's no information about it. I just don't know. Was she investigating with this paranormal society and snapped this photo, or did she take it, while she was there because her father owned the place and she was there all the time?
So Tony, I can't remember if I said this. Tony actually went to high school with Todd Johnston's kids.
Okay. Makes sense.
They're part of the Derby community that we're all involved in up there.
Nice.
That's the only way I know them.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So do we know how big this hotel is? Is it more like a B&B?
I think so. It is not very big. Okay. It's not like a typical hotel that you would see nowadays. I mean, it was built in 1880s, I think.
Yeah, 18. I have it here somewhere. 1880 it was built.
Oh, you're good, Christine.
So, just to give you a visual, when you're driving through an older historic downtown, all the buildings that butt up next to each other, you know how they're kind of thin and maybe kind of long in depth?
Yes.
That's what this is, basically. But it kind of stands alone, if I remember correctly.
Okay, yeah, Ben just brought... perfect
it's this
description.
Enormous brick building. Did you know this is not the original structure, though?
Yes, I've heard that the original structure built down. Oh my God.
You had a long day.
That'd be scary.
Yeah, it just unbuilt. Bricks just started falling.
It's an angry ghost.
All right, so the original structure burnt down, but what I thought was surprising is it burnt down not too long after it was originally built.
Yeah, I think 5 years. It burnt down 1895.
And
I thought that was interesting.
Did we ever learn why it burnt down? Electrical?
It started in the stables.
Okay.
Is all I read.
Of course, there's no electrical. My bad.
Yeah. So another interesting thing, I found a YouTube video that was shot at some round table, like a gathering of locals at the Rush City Public Library in October of 2014. They were just getting people together to talk about, in general, their paranormal experiences, any sort of supernatural activity, whatever. One woman came, a resident of Rush City, and she said she had stayed at the Grant many times allegedly, she claims not to experience anything, but just for different staycations. And what she says is that the previous owners, and this is a direct quote from the video, embraced more of the paranormal type activity there. The current owner does not really acknowledge much of that going on. She knows she's more about the restaurant and the rooms, but she's not quick to tell you that the Grant house is known for the little girl or the little boy in room 4. Another mention of the children spirits in this place. Or different things, because I know there is a room, it's either room 4 or 5, it's maybe up on the 3rd floor where there's been countless supposed stories of activity, or down in the basement. But it's interesting, the current owner does not really embrace that or promote that, because prior to that, they had people coming from the Twin Cities area to stay there, specifically to watch throughout the night, do a lot of filming, and try to find that activity. But you don't hear as much now, and I thought that was fascinating.
That is interesting.
Yeah, because there isn't a lot of stuff out online past, like, 2010, 2011.
No, and, I mean, from my own personal experience and from what I've looked up and from some of my investigations, the more open you are to it, the more it will present itself. So if you're open to kind of receiving those types of experiences, you're more likely to have one. I'm not saying that if you're going somewhere and trying to antagonize whatever energy may be floating around in the building, don't do that, because you never know what type of situation you're going to get yourself into. Who knows if a knife is going to fall off a shelf and cut your wrist. But yeah, if the owner is not open to experiencing any activity, I'm not surprised that there hasn't been a lot of activity.
So that makes me think 2 things. The first thing is that after I had learned about the Grant house, I started to research it, and I was reading reviews. In the most recent reviews, I couldn't find anyone mention anything about any sort of paranormal activity. So I wonder if that's why there's nothing recently that I've seen posted. But the second thing that makes me think is I wonder if, and this is just like this huge crazy hypothesis.
It's not crazy.
Right, for lack of better words, but I wonder if they like it that way, these spirits, because, and this just reminded me of this, I was told that after Todd Johnson had sold, one of the local mediums, do we call them mediums?
Yeah, you can call
Whatever
them mediums.
You want.
I don't really know what else to call them. But one of like the local mediums approached him out in public one day and said, "Hey, the spirits miss you. They want you back. They're mad that you sold." And apparently this has happened to him on more than one occasion.
What?
Isn't that weird?
So when we come out there again and we go see you guys at the Derby, you'll point him out and I'll go up to him and I can say that.
You probably could. Now, like I said, I've heard this. This is something that Tony told me. So Todd told Tony, Tony told me. So I haven't had this conversation with him yet.
Okay.
But I don't know. That creeped me out the most, that somebody went up to him and said, "Hey, they're mad you sold and they want you back."
Well, obviously he was doing something right as the owner for all the long-term guests.
Yeah, that's really interesting. When I heard that, I had like the contrarian in me is thinking, okay, maybe he was using it as a marketing tactic. Bring people into the Grant house and see what you experience, that sort of thing. But given that guests unknowingly experiencing things, it happening to employees,
Unless it's part of the marketing tactic.
Right. Well, I don't know.
But then again, we have Tony, who's kind of been in the building firsthand.
Yeah, and like we talked about on the Our Stories episode, the hotel, or I guess the lodging you were at in Gettysburg, you'd like to think people were not entering your room and messing with your stuff.
Right.
And just in this way, you'd hope that there aren't people like going around the hotel, running up and down the hallways in the middle of the night.
Giggling like a child.
Yeah, just to get a rise out of the guests. But it doesn't seem far-fetched.
No, I mean, anything is possible.
Yeah, so, I don't know, I just thought the whole thing was crazy, and once I learned about it, I wanted to go stay there. But when I asked Tony, he said, basically, hell no, I'm not going. So,
Girls trip.
Yep, when you guys come visit next, we'll have to go there.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
You can leave the boys at home with the kids, and you and I can go.
Yes, there we go.
Corey can come too because she's adorable, and maybe Cameron. He can be an honorary girl for the weekend.
I don't think I would bring my children into a paranormal experiment.
At least we can blame them for the giggling if we heard it at night.
There you go.
Awesome.
You guys would need another hand for the Ouija board, though.
Yeah. Oh, no Ouija boards. No Ouija boards.
You know, maybe it would be kind of cool to take, like, Cameron, because he's old enough to talk, but he's still young enough to believe anything. So he's more susceptible to seeing something or acknowledging something that we necessarily can't see or hear.
Children are, I almost want to say paranormal amplifiers, or at least people say they're like paranormal amplifiers. Kids more frequently, because just like you said, they're more open to experiences. They're still learning. They're kind of taking everything that they see and feel and hear at face value. I mean, you hear the creepy stories about kids staring down a hallway and talking to themselves, and a parent going, "Who are you talking to?" "I'm talking to this girl sitting in the corner. She's a black blob." And it's like, what the hell are you talking about? This is terrifying. Right. I mean, I wouldn't want you to be afraid of Cameron, but you do have a point there. He might help make our experience a little more exciting.
Yes, I think he would. I still think I'll leave him home though.
Thank you so much. We know how busy you are, especially how precious your evenings are with the kids. We appreciate you taking the time.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for joining us at the fire.
At the fire.
That's right.
All right. Bye, guys.
Have a good night. Bye.
You too. Bye.
The Grant House, definitely a spooky haunted hotel I'd love to add to my paranormal bucket list.
Yeah, I wonder if the footsteps can really be heard and the children really play in the hallways.
I think the kids in the halls would freak me out the most, or a knife flinging in my hand.
Yeah, even I think it's kind of weird if you were the only people staying in a hotel. They definitely wouldn't tell you, you know? But I guess in a place like that small, you'd never know. Yeah,
and again, you guys can check out links to pictures of the hotel on our website or at our Facebook page, At The Fire and atthefire.com.
Yep, all the links will be on the website. You can get to the website through the Facebook page, through the Twitter, through anything, really.
And we share so many cool things on our Facebook page, not just around our podcast, but anything that we stumble upon while we're doing research online, we love to share with anybody else who's interested.
And if you have some cool things, share them with us. We want to see that cool shit, too.
And let us know what you want to listen to. Give us some shouts on the page.
Yeah.
Tweet at us, because Twitter is happening on this podcast. @_the_fire. Is that our Twitter handle?
That's our Twitter handle.
Okay, handle.
If you want to hear about the Michigan Dogman, tell us about that. If you have ideas for other episodes, tell us all about them. We'd love to hear it.
Yeah, and you can now find us on iTunes, the Google Play Store, for those of you who refuse to buy an iPhone.
Yeah.
And what else are we on, Ben?
Don't forget to rate and review us on iTunes.
Yeah, help us. We have how many weeks to make it into the hip and new?
The hip and new. We don't have much time, but we need to make it.
So listen, share. If you like what we do, give us some feedback.
Yeah. We'd love to hear from you. If you want to be on the show, let us know. No pressure.
We'd love to have you at the fire. Thanks for joining us, and we hope to see you guys next week.
That's right. Adios. Sayonara. Stay cool. It's hot out there.
Coolamundo. Only if you're in, I guess, a hot area. Yeah, it's hot.
It's hot most of the world.
It's really hot.
I know a guy that was just in Italy. He went to Pompeii, and it was like 126 degrees.
Everybody, please
40-some degrees Celsius. Yeah,
let's all
hotter than
recycle. Let's stop using hairspray. Let's do good things for the environment. It's really hot outside.
All right.
All right. Bye.
Later.